Let's now turn to Mr. Rushern Baker, who is the Executive Director for the Community Teachers Initiative. Just by way of quick introduction on Mr. Baker, he is a longtime Maryland State House representative. Actually, he represented me for a number of years and is now the Executive Director of CTI, an organization that spends the vast majority of its time working around how you prepare teachers for doing some of the very things that Dr. Dimble just talked about and in actualizing and putting in place some of the research that Dr. Gilbert just talked about. Mr. Baker.
Thank you. That was, I knew I was going to have to go after Dr. Dimbro.
I didn't turn on the mic. You can hear me? I didn't turn on the mic.
No, you were very good.
Can you hear me back there? Yeah. Good idea.
You know, it's probably a blessing and a curse at the same time, because I get someone who explains why we need culturally based teaching, and it's probably a curse because she's so good, and someone with very little knowledge, as you will see, that I am a lawyer by training. I'm not an educator by training. I actually came into, and I'm going to give you just a brief background, by accident. I went to the state legislature, planning to spend my time trying to figure out how we improve our economic situation in Prince George's County, which is one of the largest and most highly educated, I should say it this way, and my good friend Dr. Dozier will agree. Prince George's County is known as the most educated African-American community and the most affluent African-American community probably in the world. But our education system is second from the bottom. Baltimore City, which has a dwindling population and a dwindling economic base, is the only system below us. So it perplexed many of us when I went into the legislature as to why. Having put my own children in our public school system, it perplexed me as to why we were failing. After 8 years of trying to fix the education system, not only in Prince George's County, but in the state of Maryland, I got a job and a call from a group called Community Teachers Institute. I knew nothing about the organization. They contacted me because they had followed Prince George's County because they wanted to understand if all the demographics said that we should succeed, why weren't we? And so the organization contacted me and asked me if I would come on and help them do some stuff. They said, if you're serious about changing public education, why don't you do it nationally? I never thought about that, and I thought it was an interesting challenge, especially for someone whose only education in terms of teaching is watching my kids in their schools and going to their classrooms, and I'm trying to understand how especially middle school teachers dealt with students in their classroom. That's my background into this area. Community Teachers was started by a lawyer who was practicing law in Springfield, Massachusetts, and found that most of his clients coming in and out of the juvenile system were African American and Latino. After years of trying to get them on the right path, he finally said, it's a breakdown in our education system. I simply get them out temporarily and then they go back in. So he stopped practicing law and he started an organization which started off as a GED program. From there, getting these students their GEDs. And then he evolved and he said, well, what happens if, and it was an experiment and it was a question, what happens if we treat these children the same way most middle-income parents treat their own children, which is just like my children. They have successes, they have failures, but you're always there to catch them. What if we treated these children the same way? And he started a program and got funding to actually help these kids go to college. Wasn't a requirement that they go into the teaching field, wasn't a requirement that they get all A's, wasn't a requirement that they did anything other than to go to class and to stay in school, and that we would undergird them. And that not just meant providing them with scholarship money for education, but it also meant if they needed health care, that they would help them with health care. If they needed rent money because they couldn't afford rent, they would help them. So the same way as a parent. The program was very successful, probably as most of you can guess. It was very expensive. Very hard to sustain a program like that and have a greater impact. So the organization evolved into where could we have the greatest impact? And the greatest impact on students' lives was at the teaching level. And the organization evolved into an organization that works with in-service teachers in inner-city areas, dealing with mostly African-American Latino students. From there, we decided, looking at, as Dr. Dembo has said, looking at the problems in our urban education system and how do you fix it and how do you get children to actually graduate, stay in school, become interested in the curriculum that's available to them. And after having a roundtable discussion, we came up with the notion that we needed a summer institute. That some of the things that our teachers coming out of our education schools were not getting were how to deal with culturally diverse students. And as has been said on this panel, we're becoming a school system of majority-minority, for lack of a better word. Yet our teaching workforce is mostly white, female. And it's not getting any better. Our recruitment of minority teachers is not at the level it should be. So we decided that we would try and take some of the things that culturally based teaching has been successful and see if we could at least bring into a summer institute these teachers and not necessarily train them, but to motivate them, to get them to connect with other teachers in other areas who are doing some of the same things that are more effective in getting teachers to be successful with students who come in from various backgrounds and understanding the areas where these students come from.